you. Well, welcome everybody to our August Diversity Advisory Board meeting. As Alexis just said, the meeting's being recorded as usual. Good to see everybody's faces. Hopefully everyone's getting ready for a heat wave number 2 starting tomorrow. Glad we're having our meeting tonight. So we'll jump right into it. Let's take a look at the meeting minutes from last month, July. Does anybody have any comments or revisions to those? All right, I have one quick comment, just in section 4 on the DAB bylaws agenda item. Could we just add a statement that says unanimously approved to that, and if the format could maybe be the same as it is for minute approvals, like in the first agenda item, that would be great. Do you understand what I'm talking about, Alexis?
I'm just grabbing the document. Hang on just one second. Let me make sure that I know. Okay, let's see. So under DAB bylaws, unanimous.
Yeah, if you could add the unanimously approved and just have it look the same as we usually do for our minutes when they're reviewed and approved. Just have it be consistent. It's a small thing, absolutely. But helps
good.
Me.
Yeah, good update. Thanks.
And that's all I have. So if that looks good to everybody else, with that edit, I would ask for a motion to approve those meeting minutes.
I move the motion to approve minutes as circulated.
Thank you, Raman. Do I have a second?
Hi, Teresa, second.
Fabulous. Thank you so much. All in favor? Okay, any opposed? Wonderful. Thank you, everyone, for approving those meeting minutes. We'll move on to public comment. Anybody here for that tonight?
The only member of the public that we have is Jodi. Jodi, do you have anything you'd like to say at this point? And if not, she's in transit, so she may not be available right at this moment. I don't see any other guests.
Okay, then. I'm sure we might hear from Jodi a little bit later on the night market, perhaps. Great. We do not have cultural sharing tonight. Actually, we will return to that next month. Finally, I know we've had a bit of a hiatus, so we will have that again. Liaison reports, short list tonight. Oh, Alexis.
Sorry, actually, just real quick. I just wanted to check in with the group. I know that I did a sign up at the very beginning of the year around cultural sharing, and we've run through some names and we've had some spots open, but just curious if you can sort of reaffirm if you haven't gone this year yet and you would like to do a cultural sharing, can you raise your hand or put your name in the chat just so that I kind of have a refreshed list of who we still want to and we think are, you know, can be queued up to do that in the next several meetings.
As discussed, maybe like October or November, I would volunteer.
Sounds good. Thanks, Raman.
Thanks.
Anyone else?
Well, if you guys change your mind, feel free to email Alexis. Okay, liaison reports, starting with Councilor Soucie, please.
Hey everybody, how y'all doing? Nice to see folks here still hanging in through this summer of ours. It's an odd one. and it's getting odder again. Things are a little bit slow and light at City Council, but that will change. We have 2 more meetings coming up this month. We don't have one tomorrow night, but on the 17th, we'll have a meeting where we'll be talking about some sort of, I'll call them random topics. We've got a public hearing on solid waste collection rates. We've got a public hearing on changes that we have to make to our development code and comprehensive plan related to the charter change, basically about who has authority to do what under what circumstances, and all the references to strong mayor from the past have to be changed to city manager or city council references. We have some updates to board and commission bylaws that have come forward to us. We'll be talking about those. And then we have a discussion about the facilities master plan project to figure out what needs to be done to various buildings and facilities that the city has. There'll be an update on our Title VI implementation and some things related to the First Street Commons and public drinking and some interesting code issues there. Then on the 24th, we have both a council meeting and a bureau meeting. And the bureau meeting is going to be kind of the first public airing of some discussions that have been going on with Tualatin Hills Park and Rec District about how to develop a plan for parks and open spaces in the downtown area. It's something that's never really been a topic of discussion before, because THPRD is largely focused on neighborhood parks and larger parks, community parks, and recreation facilities like swim centers and tennis courts and trails in the natural areas. But sort of downtown urban amenities is something that they have not worked with us on very much in the past, and so we're going to start digging into that, see what we need to do to make that better. And then at the City Council, we're going to have a roundtable discussion where we will have, I believe, unless it's changed, our first discussion about how to begin to use the ARPA funds that have not already been allocated to the budget. And I know that's a topic of discussion that's been going on here at the Diversity Advisory Board and will be a continuing discussion tonight. The City Council will begin to get into that on the 24th, partly in response to your recommendations, but also just to sort of frame the larger topic. We're talking about a lot of money, $5-ish million in this year, another $8.5 million for next year. And we want to be thoughtful about how we allocate that money. And so this is just the very beginning of the discussion, and there's no rush. I think we'll probably take 2 or 3 months to figure it all out, and it will get baked into the budget for next year and possibly into some some items for the supplemental budget in November as well. So that's kind of what's up until September. So if anybody has any questions about things we're doing now, oh yeah, we got a new city manager starting on the 23rd and 24th. So that'll be fun, because we've already had a chance to interact with Jen Haruyama in one of our meetings recently. We had an executive session to talk about some things, and she was invited to join us. I think we're all looking forward to her arrival. She's been moving here to Beaverton, and is looking forward to diving in and joining us as a full-time employee of the city of Beaverton. So with that, I'll take any questions anybody has. And before I do, I will note that unfortunately I have to leave a little early tonight. I'll be disappearing about 6 o'clock, but it is great to be here. So questions? Okay.
I guess I will have a question then.
Okay.
So you were speaking to the $5 million in ARPA funds that had not yet been allocated for this year. Could you talk about some of the maybe the larger buckets of ARPA funds that have already been allocated and where they were allocated?
Right off the top, we put $3 million into the city budget to cover areas where the COVID pandemic had created revenue shortfalls. That's one of the primary purposes of the ARPA funding is to cover revenue shortfalls either in municipal budgets or in the community. And we had a significant downturn in development and development fees, and so our building fund was significantly short. We also had reductions in a number of other areas of the city that were directly attributable to COVID reductions in economic and community activity. And the direction that we were given by the federal government was cover your budget holes, and then be thoughtful about how to spend the rest of it. So $3 million was taken right out and put into the budget for this fiscal year. It didn't actually get spent on anything. It just went to fill holes in the budget.
Thanks. And different topic, but is there any timeline for when the city building will be, city hall will be open again?
I would love to be able to answer that question for you.
Okay,
No.
cool.
Soon, we hope.
All right. Any other questions, comments from anybody? All right, well, good to see you again. Oh, Teresa.
Sorry, I have a really quick lighthearted question / comment in regards to the changing of the codes and alcohol laws. I mean, we're not going to go full Mardi Gras status with daiquiri shops on every other corner downtown, right? We're just gonna, okay.
No, it's really just to reconcile some language in our city code with the fact that we would like to encourage people to use the First Street dining commons to dine and consume adult beverages in reasonable circumstances. And it's just correcting a circumstance that we want to get right. It's not to allow people to wander the streets of Beaverton drinking vodka out of open bottles. And the captain is very pleased to hear that.
In designated areas, of course.
Of course.
All right, thank you, Councilor Soucie. It's good to see you again. All right, Captain Wandell, good to have you with us this evening as well.
Thank you. And I don't know if everybody heard on the first part of the meeting, this will be my last time with everyone because decided to retire September 1st. So that's gonna be my last day. And after 34 years, I decided it's maybe time to do something a little different. So the other exciting part of that is with me leaving, that makes room for change. So Alan Jules, who's a lieutenant in the patrol division, will be taking over for me. And I really like Alan. I think you'll get to know him soon and enjoy working with him. And then Rob Wolf is one of our sergeants, get promoted to lieutenant. And then Denisha Barrett, who I worked with in the traffic division, is getting promoted to sergeant. So it's kind of a nice natural process of change here. So so time's gone by quickly. And so Alexis and anyone else, with vacation time, I'm only going to have like about 4 days with Lieutenant Jules or now Captain Jules. So if anybody wants to try to make some type of contact the last week of August, let me know. Maybe we can do a quick Zoom meeting or something like that. If not, I think the transition to Alan's going to be smooth. So I'm not concerned at all. Let's see, one other thing. We have started doing small tours of the new Public Safety Center, and Consuelo Star is arranging those. So we're doing small groups. Right now we're doing our BPD volunteers, but if anybody from DAB would like to get a tour of the building, let me know, and I can facilitate that. We're kind of doing small groups, and obviously masks are required in the building. So other than that, it'd be a good tour. I think I'm missing something, but I didn't take good notes. So, and like the counselor, I won't be able to stay on for the whole meeting, but I'm still working the next 2.5 weeks. So if anybody needs anything, would like a phone call, email, let me know, because I'm only taking a couple days vacation as I try to wrap things up. Time's going by quickly. So I've enjoyed everybody's participation in the conversations, and I look forward to a smooth transition, and it'll be good. So any questions or thoughts for me?
Manijeh here talking. So I just have a comment. Is there has been anything that as a DAP member that I have been doing? Captain Smith left us and you're leaving us now. Please let me know if I can change anything. Change it so you guys don't leave us. I'm going to miss you.
Well, I appreciate that. Yeah, Captain Smith wasn't supposed to leave before me. He and I had kind of an unwritten deal. I was supposed to go first, and then all of a sudden he decided to go enjoy retired life. So I think everybody else after me and Mike are pretty much here for a few years, so we should be good. I appreciate the thoughts.
Yeah, thank you for everything you're doing and you have been doing for us. Thank you.
Thank you.
That wasn't waving. That was a hand up.
Oh, I thought you were just waving goodbye, Teresa. I was like, that's nice.
No,
Yes.
I put like a double hand, virtual one and a real one. So can you ensure that your replacement attends our festival this weekend in order to have an in-person hello of some kind, or, you know, to encourage them to go? I'm certain that many of the DAB members will be at the Beaverton Night Market and just try to say hello, even if people don't have the time to make a special meet and greet virtually on Zoom.
Okay. Now, you're referring to Alan, Captain Jules?
Yes.
Yeah, he is actually out of state. He is back in the Midwest for Memorial. There was a loss in his family. So otherwise he would be here, and I'd encourage him to come out for the weekend. But so if Teresa, if you want to try to make time too, we can try to make that happen the last week of August. Let me know. Yeah, I actually had to call him back in Lincoln, Nebraska, and congratulate him. I'm from Nebraska as well, so there's that connection between Alan and I a little bit. But yeah, unfortunately, he couldn't be here. And I know you're waving goodbye too. I know you're doing that. There was a question and waving goodbye.
All right. Well, thanks so much, Captain Wandell, for being our liaison this year. And I hope you enjoy retirement. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Okay, we are a little ahead of schedule, so I hope that Jena is ready. If so, she is our first presentation this evening. Again, she's Associate Planner for the City of Beaverton, and she's going to be discussing Development Code Changes project to allow for permanent shelters in Beaverton for the first time. So I'll turn it over to Jena.
Yes, thank you, Rachel. Before I get into shelters, I actually want to give a quick plug for the Cooper Mountain Community Plan open house. The virtual open house just launched the end of July, and it'll be up until August 22nd. I'll share my screen just so you can see what it looks like, and then I'll get into my presentation, I promise. But I just wanted to share because I've presented on Cooper Mountain in the past. So if this is something that you've been staying on top of, or you want to just see where we're at in the process in terms of plan concepts, there's this really cool tool. There's tabs at the top. So if you're just interested in like housing or transportation, or I know I got a lot of feedback about environmental stewardship when I was here last talking about Cooper Mountain. So if you want to click on that tab and hear some of the initial ideas, and then there are some questions. Yeah, I just wanted to make sure you all know about it. It's just beavertonoregon.gov/CM if you want to go on and learn and fill out the questionnaire. And there's a raffle too if you fill out all the questions for a Beaverton restaurant gift card. And I know that Casera Phibbs, who's also a planner with the city, will be at the Beaverton Night Market tabling for Cooper Mountain. So if you want to chat in person and get your questions answered, she'll be there. All right, now into the main event. Okay, are you still seeing my screen? Okay, just want to make sure I have the double monitor going on. Okay. Oop. Not the agenda. All right. So, as mentioned, my name is Jena Hughes. I regularly come to these DAB meetings, and hold on one second. And, I've been hearing since the beginning of coming to these meetings, I've been listening a lot and hearing a lot about some of DAB's priorities. And I know that some of you have expressed interest in helping combat homelessness in our community. So I'm really eager to hear your thoughts about this new project that we launched called the Shelter Code Project. As you know, homelessness and the need to assist people experiencing homelessness are issues that are not new and they're not unique to Beaverton. It's a problem all over the region and the country, and the need to support our houseless community has only grown significantly since the start of the COVID-19 pandemic. And shelters play a really important role in supporting those who don't have permanent housing. But there's also lots of other types of shelters and used for a lot of other situations, such as to support victims of domestic violence or people displaced by disasters like wildfire, for example. So I'm going to give a brief overview of what this project will do to help determine where and how shelters will be allowed in Beaverton. And then I'd love to hear from you all how we can ensure an equitable approach to shelters and other factors we should be taking into consideration. So I just wanted to give just some brief definitions. These aren't our official definitions that are in the code, but I wanted to make it clear that we are looking at all types of shelters. So that includes emergency shelters, which are facilities with overnight sleeping space that provide temporary shelter for people in a time of crisis. And then there are severe weather shelters, which are a type of emergency shelter, specifically during severe heat, like the upcoming heat wave that's going to happen this week, and severe cold, like our winter shelter. And then the third type are permanent or year-round shelters. And these are facilities that provide shelter on a year-round basis. So not just for those emergency crisis situations, for people until they can transition into more permanent housing. So I just wanted to make that distinction. And this project is being guided by existing community and city policy direction, something that's in our diversity, equity, and inclusion plan. There is a policy area that directly says the city supports the development of a year-round shelter in Beaverton. And our community vision plan also has actions around reducing and preventing homelessness and providing temporary shelters. And our comprehensive plan, which is our long-range planning document looking at how we plan for growth of the city over 20 years, also has policies around combating homelessness and providing that continuum of care for people, and as well as supporting emergency and transitional housing options such as homeless shelters. So there's really a lot of existing policy and community direction that this project is going off of. However, with our code doesn't currently allow permanent or year-round shelters, even though that is something that is in our DEI plan, is something that we support, but our code is not currently aligned with our policies and our priorities. So emergency and severe weather shelters are allowed. Permanent year-round shelters are not allowed. They're not even addressed or defined in our development code, which is development code is our is essentially our land use rules. And there is a state law that offers some protection at the moment. It will allow applicants who want to site a shelter in Beaverton to do so, and it will allow us to approve those applications for shelters. But only until July of 2022. So, it's an okay short-term solution, but we really need a long-term solution, something in our development code to make sure that we allow shelters, all types of shelters, in the long run. So that's kind of why this project is important. So we've hired a consultant to help us uh, with research, and the consultant is David Evans and Associates. And the project will ultimately, it will create a clear definition for permanent or year-round shelters. It will clarify where and how shelters of all kinds will be allowed in Beaverton, and then also make improvements to how the code currently allows or handles emergency and severe weather shelters if there are existing issues in terms of like, oh, it's too restrictive because we're only allowed to have our winter shelter, from November to whatever, some other date, and it could be restrictive because it's like, okay, well, what if we need an extension for that? Then we have to keep going back and getting these extensions, as opposed to can we make this more flexible? So we're just exploring if there are ways we can make improvements, if there are currently barriers. And as part of this project, it's a best practice for us now to include a racial equity analysis. So we are using the GARE, or the Government Alliance on Racial Equity Toolkit, in order to make sure that we are maximizing benefits and trying to reduce burdens as much as possible for people of color. And essentially the toolkit is kind of a list of steps or questions to check.
Oops, Jena, your audio just went out.
Did my microphone go off?
There we go. We got you again.
I think my headphones died. Sorry about that.
It's okay. We didn't miss much. You just were saying what the tool was.
Oh, yeah. I just wanted to clarify. I know you probably heard about GARE at this point, because I think several people have talked about it in the past, but just a review. It's just kind of like an analysis tool to make sure that we are constantly checking ourselves, asking ourselves the tough questions of like, will this create unintended consequences for people of color? And if so, like, how do we work through that? So that's just kind of a basic overview. And we'll also be taking an intersectional lens to make sure that we can also extend those same benefits to others disproportionately represented in our homeless population. So that includes seniors, children, people who identify as LGBTQ+, women, persons with disabilities, veterans, youth exiting foster care and unaccompanied homeless youth, people with criminal records, victims of domestic violence, and people living with certain chronic health conditions. In terms of our timeline, it's moving pretty fast, but that's because we want to make sure we have something in place by the time the state law runs out before July of 2022. So it's sort of like a safety net. So we make sure that we are able to have permanent or year-round shelters in place. And so this phase, the first phase, is the project kickoff. Our consultants will be doing a code analysis to see what are the issues, how can we make improvements to our code. We'll be researching best practices for shelters, including looking at case studies in other cities and various shelter models. And then, of course, public engagement. And in addition to, talking to DAB, and I'll be talking to BCCI and the Housing Technical advisory group and just the general public, but there will also be more of a targeted approach. I'll be talking directly to shelter providers and organizations who represent or serve people experiencing homelessness. And this first phase of engagement is really focused on defining what are the main issues and opportunities with allowing shelters in Beaverton. And then once this research and analysis phase is wrapped up, I can, if there's interest, I can absolutely come back to DAB and show you what we found and what we've learned. And then we'll definitely need help from community to tell us what is the best model for Beaverton. So, and then by the time it's more of the spring of next year is when we'll be bringing these draft development code changes to Planning Commission and City Council. And we hope to adopt it in spring of 2022. So now that kind of concludes the brief introduction to the project, and I can absolutely take questions, but I also have some questions for you all, which is one, are there any equity considerations we should be thinking about for this project? And do you see any issues and or opportunities with allowing shelters in Beaverton? And I mean, this could be anything from, are there places in Beaverton or where shelters should be located, how they operate, impact on nearby residents or businesses. So I'm just curious to know what you think. And I see Teresa has a hand up.
Yes, thank you, Jena. As always, we're so happy to have you here. I just wanted to take the time to answer one of those questions and then at the end to ask a question of my own. So in regards to the first question, considerations, thinking about the project and equity, I think you've hit a lot of the points, especially that the community has regarding communities that are often left out, not just communities of color, but veterans, the community who are struggling to get out of domestic violence, and youth. I also want to just as a reminder that when we're talking about shelters, that the need for people to be housed goes beyond race. And so, yes, we need to prioritize those groups, but to certainly ensure that those who do not identify as people of color receive the same level of care and assistance. So I know that that's kind of said without being said, but just to make it very clear that a part of equity and inclusion means exactly that, that it is for everyone and that it is accessible. So just having to throw that in there. And I think that trying to be inclusive, sometimes when you don't spell it out, assumptions are made, and I want to ensure that there's no room for assumptions to be made, that this is for everyone regardless, but that historically these groups, as you listed in your bullet points, have not been helped as much. So to remember to say that little one-liner. I also just wanted to ask my own question. When you had mentioned that the city of Beaverton is reviewing other city models in which the cities are combating houselessness or homelessness, were you looking at cities with a similar population that the city of Beaverton has? So between 80 to 110,000, or were you considering much larger cities like Portland? No offense, but I hope you're not looking at Portland as a case study to follow, but looking at cities that are about the city of Beaverton size, regardless of where it is in the United States. So that's a question for you, that are you looking at case studies for combating houselessness and shelters in cities with a population of a similar size, plus or minus 20,000 or 30,000?
Yeah, that's a really great question. Thank you for asking. We haven't selected our cities yet. Actually, we're this early in the research process that we're still thinking about it. But that's a really great point, that we need to be looking at cities with a similar population size as Beaverton, you know, in the region, maybe outside of the region. If there's cool things happening elsewhere, I think we should consider that. But I guess the short answer is we're not there yet.
Monica, I see you. Go ahead.
Me? Okay. First of all, I want to echo the part of Teresa mentioning, when we hear that the specified groups, it concerns me not to be equal to everyone. So I appreciate what Teresa mentioned, because I want everybody to be able to participate and to be able to qualify for those programs. So yeah, it's a big issue when mention different groups or specific groups that they were more needed, but we need to make sure that everybody will be included. It doesn't matter ethnicity or color or anything. That's a big thing in my heart. So that's another, that's the issue that I like to repeat, even though that Teresa said already.
Thank you, Monica.
I see Alex and then Ugonna.
Mine's pretty quick. I just want to say, so far, I like the look of everything and second what other folks have said, but hard to have feedback at this point until it gets more specific. So I'd be really eager to, I guess, hear the updates.
Ugonna?
Thank you so much. Thank you, Jena. My only contribution here would be in looking at the location for the shelter, that we look at it holistically and think about our the population that actually that we service through shelters, and think about access to amenities for them. So if we're going to have a shelter, we should have it in a location that can grant them access to transportation. You know, you think about access to emergency care, access to, you know, bare necessities. So we shouldn't be looking at, historically, when cities are building shelters, they're looking at poor neighborhoods. That shouldn't be what would be driving the location. What should drive the location should be what can help the homeless be able to access certain amenities, for example, transportation. So we shouldn't be looking at socioeconomic, we shouldn't be looking at whether or not it's a rich neighborhood or poor neighborhood. It shouldn't actually be what should drive the location. What should drive the location is we look at who we are servicing and what can help them be mobile, what can help them have access to bare necessities and amenities. That's, I don't know if I'm making sense. Thank you.
Yes, that's a great thought. Thank you. Sorry, I just wanted to say, yeah, that's a really great thought. And it's something that's come up before, is thinking about what types of amenities would be helpful for people who are trying to access the shelter. So I think that's a great point. Thank you.
I was just going to say that is exactly what I was going to say, Ugonna. So thanks for bringing all of that up for me. And then I was also just going to ask, it sounds like you're really early on in the process, but have you already started looking at potential sites?
No, so this isn't a site-specific project. And that's the thing where it's kind of odd, like it's a citywide project, but we're not mapping anywhere. So well, in terms of like where would they be allowed, it might be in terms of certain zoning, like, oh, anywhere where there's commercial zoning, for example, or maybe for the transportation idea, it could be anywhere within a quarter mile of a transit station or something, like, so those are just some ideas. I know something that Portland did. I don't know if we want to be mimicking Portland, but just looking at ideas, I think they allow it anywhere where multifamily housing or apartments specifically are allowed. But that would also be looking at a map of Beaverton and asking the question, well, would then that be equitably distributed across the city? And so just some things to think about, but we won't be looking at specific like sites.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
When you decide where these are going to be located, you're going to start mapping about that. Are there going to be any survey or something related to the public accepting or participating where they should be? Because perhaps some areas they might don't want it, or the opposition will be very strong. So how are you guys thinking about that?
Yeah, so that's something that is a decision that we would have to make. How strict do we want to be in terms of our land use process? Do we want, so yeah, in terms of like, how do shelters operate? What does the land use process look like? That's something that I'm very open to feedback about. Whether or not, I feel like I've heard multiple viewpoints where the public wants to play a huge role in where do shelters go in their neighborhood. Whereas, I've heard from a lot of shelter service providers that they're like, well, this kind of creates a barrier in terms of where we put shelters. And so, I'd love to hear more feedback if people have thoughts. But it's something we'll look into, but nothing has been decided.
Hi guys, this is Ahmed. I miss you all, and I have a question about the shelters. So do we will consider or do we put in our mind those shelters, like how much will be close, like maybe to ER, like emergency room if something happened, or like maybe marketing, or what about neighbors, if they will agree to have shelter and their neighbors or not? Do we consider those things or not? Thank you.
Yeah, we can consider those things. Something that in talking with some staff members and just other people who I've been talking with about the project in terms of like neighbors, someone brought up, oh, well, maybe we can have an increased setback. So for example, if you are a person living in a property next to where there's going to be a shelter, maybe that means creating a little bit more space in between the buildings is an idea. So we're going to be thinking about it, but yeah, we're just in this process of, is this something that people care about, or, we're just thinking about ideas. And that was a really good, interesting idea that I hadn't heard of before, is like distance to like hospitals or medical offices. So that was an interesting point that you just made. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Raman?
I was wondering whether this study is purely for shelters or also will it include ways to eliminate the homeless situation?
So this project is just looking at shelters and specifically like in terms of land use, where they would be allowed and how in terms of the land use process. In terms of other tools to help combat homelessness, you know, I know there are a ton. We'll definitely be talking with nonprofits, but it's a little bit outside the scope of this project. But yeah, I know that shelters are just one tool to help in a whole entire toolbox that we really need in order to tackle this issue.
Thank you. The reason why I asked, back in 1985, I was on board for homeless situation in Portland. And unfortunately, instead of getting rid of the issue at that time, most of the homeless people were users. So instead of eliminating the issue, it was voted to start the methadone program, which to me was counterproductive. And that's the reason why I was asking.
Yeah, it's a good question. This will just be, you know, this one singular land use project. It won't be a program, but yeah, I mean, we'll certainly be talking to people who run programs like that, but it won't be included in this project.
Okay, thank you.
I might just jump in for just a minute, Jena. For those of you who are newer to the board, we do have a one of the programs that I oversee in the in the City Services and Engagement Department is the Community Services Program, and that is the program that houses the city's response to homelessness specifically. So there are several different partnerships and programs that we run out of that program to contribute to the larger picture of trying to tackle or address homelessness. And there's several other city programs and entities that help work on this issue as well. But I just wanted you to know that what Jena is talking about is this really essential code piece that helps some of these other pieces be able to happen. But it's not the only thing that the city is doing by any means. It's just one of the things, one of the sort of bones of the infrastructure that allows both the city and then lots of other partners in the region and the county to be able to respond and provide multiple responses to homelessness. So happy to, it's been a while since we've talked about the community services and the homelessness response at DAB. We have done it in the past, but we haven't done it this year, I don't think, for example. So, you know, if that's something of interest to the board as this conversation emerges, we can also fill in some more gaps about what else is the city doing, or sort of what is the strategy overall in terms of the city's role in responding to that issue.
Teresa, I see your hand up, and also I wanted to direct Jena to take a look at the chat. There's some feedback in there, and also a question about, I think, if the code change would allow for one shelter site or multiple shelter sites in Beaverton.
Hello. Okay. Last question, I promise, Jena. I am really curious about how the code is going to come together. I was looking at some of the codes that the city of Beaverton has right now and what it could look like, this mesh of codes that do exist and the creation of code as it has never been seen before in the history of Beaverton. So geeking out on the complexity of codes, I guess, can you speak to that briefly about creating that code based on what does not exist for those that are a bit more technically inclined with the city? I know some people will be viewing this afterwards and they may have the same thought. So if you are able to speak to some codes that you're working with that currently exist, and then your thoughts just as a staffer on what are the possibilities are for this, that'd be really interesting. Thank you.
Sure. Always good to talk with someone who loves to talk about code. So, in terms of the parts of our development code, and I can send you the sections because later or at any point if you want to just talk about it online outside this meeting. But so chapter 90 is our definitions, and we have a definition for emergency shelters. We have a definition for inclement weather emergency shelters, which I've just been calling severe weather. We don't have a definition that even remotely addresses permanent or year-round shelters. So that's kind of step one, is editing chapter 90 to include that definition. And then also asking ourselves, are these definitions for emergency shelters still good, or should we try to update these a little bit? So it'll affect that section. And then our land use, I don't have the exact section in front of me, but in our, I believe it'd be under chapter 20, which is our land uses, just if there are certain zones that we can highlight and just list shelters are allowed here, and then providing it, I assume maybe something about the land use process if it is different for shelters. We would be writing code about that. And so it'll just be kind of these text amendments. It might be minor, or it could be a lot, depending on if people have a lot of preferences. So, and I feel like I need to do more research in order to figure out my personal opinion in terms of what I think the code should look like. But I mean, it's pretty obvious that we just need a definition, and we need to address it in our land use table somewhere of where is this allowed, and under what type of zoning, if it's commercial zoning or mixed use zoning, that sort of thing, or if it's allowed in residential zoning. So yeah, does that answer your question?
Yeah, I was hoping you would have more, but that's okay. Some things that
I have more next time. How about that?
No offense. You're doing fantastic. Thank you so much. I was going to throw out some examples. For example, I have volunteered once or twice at Family Promise, which was held at the Beaverton Community Center. And so that was held as a mixed use space, not necessarily commercial because they're not selling anything, right? But in that mixed use space on another time, that could be used for a bake sale or whatever. But that's the whole point of it being mixed use. And so with mixed use, it's a fine line between that and residential, because theoretically these people would be staying there, correct? But the point is for it to be short term, which the goal is, after 50 years, there wouldn't be a need for it, right? Because we would, as a collective, Beaverton resolves homelessness in, our county, hooray, which, is the goal. And we hope that very much, with the expectation of what exists, right? I know that there is another organization, Home Plate Youth Services, that they have mixed use property and no one really stays there, but it's used as a day center, a resource space. So just thinking of the zoning and the mixed use property of what exists, and it's not technically commercial, but it is in a zone that has mixed use and commercial within Midtown or Central Beaverton. So just making it a bit more real life application to those who may not have read the zoning or codes of Beaverton, and giving real life examples of what that looks like. Of if it were mixed use, this is an example of supportive community in the form of Family Promise or in the form of Home Plate. Not to step on your toes, even though that may or may not be the entire truth, but thank you very much for your time, and I yield my time to the chair.
Thank you, Teresa. Actually, I do want to answer a question that was in the chat from Hiral, which is it one shelter site or multiple? And then I think I answered that earlier, but it will affect multiple locations. So we're not just looking at one site.
Monica, one last question or comment?
Yes, thank you. I was just thinking right now, I hope when you guys are ready to decide this or to create this to make it more formal, if you have a meeting, what do you call town meeting or something with a lot of the people of the communities can express their opinions in order for you to create something that is more valuable, taking in account everything that you need to know and consider about the opinion of people, and might be more helpful for you guys in making a decision where, how many, how, and all of that. So that will be my comment, maybe having a large meeting to listen to more people than just few in order for you two guys come up with something valuable, maybe a long term at that point. And that will be satisfactory for the communities and for the homeless people to feel comfortable and have a very peaceful life, if you say, wherever they can be settled. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you everybody for your feedback, and thank you so much, Jena, for coming to yet another DAB meeting and presenting to us. We look forward to having you back again for an update on this project. It sounded like there was a lot of interest in seeing this again and seeing where you guys are at in a few months. So thank you. All right, time for another presentation from a couple of our best friends, Alexis and Paolo, the Dream Team. They are going to be discussing an update to the city's language access policy and what that process entails. So go Dream Team.
I'm gonna let you kick off, Paolo.
Oh, sure. Thanks so much. I do agree. We have an awesome team. And I think as Rachel mentioned, yeah, we're talking about the updated language access policy. But before we talk about any updates, I just want to say that this all started and culminated out of conversations that came out of this group, DAB, all of you. And so Monica, I saw your big smile there. I don't know if you recall when we were sitting in council chambers, you and I were sitting putting on butcher paper. Well, we definitely need a language access something, right? I know Spanish isn't here, and I know Tagalog isn't there either. So let's start something. So thank you, Dad, for starting that, and thank you for keeping me employed, and thank you for doing all this work, because it's because of you that people have been able to access city resources in other languages. And I love the energy and the dancing. So yeah, as we jump into updates for the city policy or the language access policy, we're going to talk a little bit about the development of that policy and what that policy entails, what language access has currently been looking like and how it's used today. And then we have a few questions that we want to ask you in this space that hopefully we could gather some feedback from you so that we could continue to make sure that the city is doing everything that they can do to make sure that everybody, no matter what language you speak, can access city resources. With that, Alexis, is it cool if I turn it over to you to intro the policy a little bit?
Sure, yeah. I can talk a little bit about what we have in place. We're gonna try to keep this brief because we want to hear your feedback, but this is a topic that is near and dear to our hearts. Paolo, one of his main parts of his role is to be our language access coordinator in many ways. And so it's something that our team houses and sort of shepherds along. The policy and I sent around to you all in advance, if you had a chance to scan it or if you've seen it before, was passed in 2015 after all of that work that you all did, and we brought it to City Council. And essentially what that policy does is, for the first time, it articulates our commitment to federal civil rights law around the areas of language access, but also what we aspire to as a city in terms of making sure that anybody can have meaningful access to programs and benefits and services of the city, no matter what language they speak and no matter where they are on their English language acquisition journey, right? So that it's city staff that needs to be able to, and the city that as an institution that needs to be equipped to be able to serve the community and work to eliminate or mitigate that barrier, rather than that we expect people to come with their own tools to be able to access services. So the policy, commits to that. It talks a little bit about the process that we went through in order to develop the policy in terms of looking at data. There's a federal standard in terms of developing language access policies, and there's something called a 4-factor analysis. And essentially that's just a fancy way to say we look at multiple data points to see what our English language learner population looks like, then determine based on that, what services we're going to offer and how to prioritize the amount of money and the way that those services are offered. So the policy itself, one of the things that came together, aside from just sort of passing the policy, was that it helped us create a dedicated line item in our budget to cover the costs of translation and interpretations that used to exist kind of in a sporadic way across the city or wasn't being done very well. Now we house those contracts. We do quality control. We make sure that we have the people in place that we need, and then other city staff in other departments can put in a work order internally and say, I'm going to have this event. I need an interpreter in X, Y, and Z language to be there, and then mostly Paolo will facilitate that actually happening. So it's all going through one channel. We know that we're getting quality services, and we know we have budget to pay for it, and that's not a barrier. The policy makes sure that we're notifying the public in frontline areas that these services, language assistance, is available. And so we went through a process of putting up signage in all of the frontline areas across the city saying that, and making some different tools that Paolo might point out in multiple languages expressing that, please ask for an interpreter, please ask for these things are available. It also laid out some requirements around staff training. And so we do regular staff training around how to use the tools that we have. It also sort of nodded to and then helped develop some policy later, or inform some policy later, around recognizing and testing and then paying staff who are bilingual in priority languages to be able to receive some extra compensation for that, recognize that as a skill in the workplace that we need. So that's a piece that came together. And then, importantly, it says, don't just put this on the shelf and never come back to it, but you need to come back and review the policy periodically, make sure that the languages that you chose are still current, make sure that, we're doing everything that we can. And so we're at that point now where we're looking at how do we renew this policy. So we, in some ways we're going to go about a similar process in terms of looking at data, but we think we have a lot more availability of data potentially now, because we can look at how has it been going so far. We can talk to users of those services so far. We can talk to staff who've been using those, on all ends. And we can, get updated information from our partners at the school district and other places to really look at that. So I will just say, in terms of what we're planning on for the update of the policy, we're planning on, we're also using the GARE racial equity lens tool that Jena mentioned, just as a process tool to think about who are we and how do we prioritize folks who most need these services, and how do we make sure that those voices are a part of the process. So we're in the process of elaborating that, and that has helped us come up with new people that we think we should talk to that we hadn't thought of. And it also helped us realize that we really need to make sure that DAB is involved in this conversation at a couple of different touch points, because you all were really instrumental in this process before. So we're here now to kind of lay out what it looks like and where we're going. And then we're hoping to come back probably twice more, once after we gather some of that data and we hear some of that feedback from users and say, this is kind of what we're hearing, this is what we're thinking about for improvements. Does this resonate with you all? And is this what you think we're hearing as well, what we're all hearing? And then to come at the end when we actually have closer to the end when we actually have a draft of a new policy and say, does this look right? Does this feel right before we take it to City Council for approval? So that's a little outline of what we have and kind of where we think we're going. Go ahead, Paolo.
Thanks, Alexis. And thank you, Shara, for your comments in there. I'm kind of looking at the chat while listening at the same time. So hopefully we can cover some of that as we're, oh, hi, Shara, as we continue here. So I'm gonna lay a little bit about what language access looks like at the city today. And then we're gonna jump into some of those specific questions that we have for you that I'll just go ahead and throw in the chat. And so Alexis jumped into this a little bit when she was talking about the policy, but the city requires that all vital documents are translated for the public. And so we work with this great organization called Linguava, and they have been translating all of our materials, some of which are web, since we're in a pandemic, right? Some of which as a virtual materials that you see as well. And so vital documents that could be applications for a building permit or a business permit or something along those lines, flyers, announcements and updates to the public. I'm going to assume that many, if not all folks here are familiar with the Beaverton Night Market. So if you saw the flyer going out for that, you might have noticed that it is in both English and Spanish. So just to pull some numbers for you as well. Last fiscal year, we actually had 74 documents officially translated. And I'll say that that is actually a little bit lower than previous years, but that's also sometimes the nature of the beast. The more things you get translated, the less you'll probably need to get translated the following year. But I will say translation that's happening in the 2021 fiscal year has been up quite a bit, especially with web page translations. And I'm also really happy to share that we actually used up every penny in that line item for translation as well. The other piece, interpretation, we work with a great organization called the Oregon Certified Interpreters Network, or OSIN. Some of you, I know that the interpretation world is pretty small. A lot of us tend to know each other. So you may be familiar with this group, or Carlos Nunez, the one who coordinates that company, as well as we work with the language line. So some materials I could just share right now, all staff on their very first day during orientation are given one of these I Speak cards, and it does this nifty thing. Billy the Beaver's on one side, but then on the other side, it's a list of languages in multiple colors. And it says, I speak XYZ language. So I speak Tagalog, and on here it says, Marunong akong mag-Tagalog. So staff have that way that they could engage the public as well. And then on the other side is a way that a phone number that they could call to get live interpretation on the phone or in a frontline area like Alexis was talking about. And so, yeah, let's see, for interpretation numbers, last year we had just under 30 reservations made for interpretation. One example, if any of you were at the night market vendor orientation, that was what, 2 weeks ago? There were some interpreters there. So, oh, there you go. Thank you, Manijeh. So those, some of those interpreters, for example, came from the Oregon Certified Interpreters Network. Not included in those numbers, though, are the multiple times a year that the language line, this thing right here, is used. So I don't have all those numbers from the whole entire city, but I'll just say just from last year alone, the court used the language line 95 times. So it's used quite a bit and whether it's for visiting a frontline area or actually for actual court cases. Like Alexis said, we do staff trainings as well. We've been doing 2 a year, and I'm happy to say that in this last training that it was the biggest training I think we've had as far as attendance goes. So language access, I'm trying to paint a picture for you. has been really big and is somehow continuing to grow too. So it's starting to catch on with other programs, and we're starting to see others are starting to see and catch on to all of us saying, yes, there is a need for this. Yes, we do need to get our documents translated, and yes, we do need an interpretation for our events. I think it was not the other week, we actually had Spanish interpretation at one of those events, or one of the, let me start over. 2 weeks ago, we had Spanish interpretation at the council meeting. It would be a dream of mine to have interpretation at every council meeting, but this isn't about me. So anyways, that's just a small snapshot about what language access has been looking like. I'm gonna throw into the chat some questions that we have for y'all. But before I do that, Alexis, is there anything else that maybe I missed or you wanna add? Cool. So let's see. Should I just put all the questions on there? I saw for Jena's presentation, all the questions were up there. I'll do that. Okay, so the first question's there. Give me just a sec to grab the others. Boom, boom, boom.
We can go ahead and open it up for some feedback. I know we're
short
on time. We have so much to tell you about this subject. Monica, go ahead.
I just want to say, when we did this part of the language access, we knew that it was not going to be possible. I'm sorry. Am I mute? Yeah.
No, I can hear you.
It was knowing that it would not be possible to go all the languages at the same time. Remember, we were talking about that we will take steps to do one. The Spanish was the first one because of the percentage of people who need it. And that's how we elaborated. We were increasing every time that we see the need more and more, and it needed to take time. So it's not that language access was not fair to everybody. No, that was not the case. It was because we had to work at first and we have to go step by step. And I think right now you guys have a very good number of languages that you can help and translate it or interpret it. So that's the only comment I wanted to people understand. How did it come out? And the reason that it was accepted or passed the city, which was the most beautiful feeling, it was because we started with Spanish because it was what, 25% of the population was Spanish speakers, and they needed and then we were looking for the other languages that we need to work on it. So it's always been not only one or two languages, always we were aiming to most of the language we can help it well. Thank you.
Thank you, Monica. Yeah, I just went ahead and put in the chats the 7 priority languages that are in there, and Alexis had a great comment also. But yes, the contractors that we work with have the ability to translate and interpret for, almost all, I say all languages, knowing that there's many indigenous languages that we're probably not accounting for, definitely not accounting for, but yeah, our contractors have the ability to translate and interpret for many other languages as well. A lot of that was also based off of what studies that, like Alexis said, came from the 4-factor analysis and what we saw most common in the Beaverton School District too. So.
And does that include sign language?
So under our policy, sign language is something that we have been able to get interpretation for before, but it's not included in the 7 priority languages because it's just not as common, but it is something that we can get interpretation for. I will go back up. I'll still keep my ear open if there are any questions, but I'm going to go up and shout out. I'm going to go ahead and read your stuff too, since no one's talking at the moment. So Shara, just a few things about, sometimes not having a specific language represented. A lot of that too is, again, we're prioritizing the languages that are most common. But the other piece of that too is there's something that's called a language box that we have been putting on a lot of our documents and larger documents where folks can actually request to have a document translated in their preferred language. But another piece of this too is, you know, Alexis did mention actually getting the word out that this exists and people can get access to city resources in language. And that's something that I think I personally would like more help on too, is how do we let the community know that, hey, these things do exist and you can come over here. You know, I used to do interpretation for my grandma at all her appointments, including her hospital visits. And that doesn't necessarily have to happen here at the city anymore. You don't have to do that. Oh, I don't know how we're going to facilitate this, but I see Teresa's hand. So go ahead, Teresa.
Thank you. So I just wanted to, I already mentioned something in the chat, but to say separately that there are a lot of people who do just that, Paolo, who translate for their friends, family, and neighbors, just in a common instance, but oftentimes when they do volunteer to help at events for the city or over Zoom or in public places or for the city in that professional capacity, they asked for certification, and oftentimes they're pushed away because they don't have, I don't know the name of the program, excuse me for not knowing, but whatever the certificate is, through going through the program to be able to officially translate, they have to go through some type of test. But there are people who are proficient and efficient in translating from anything to anything else, right? So just to say that that is going on, I don't know if there's any way, you know, to assist future interpreters in order to push them to the right places in order to be certified. I also know that those types of programs aren't cheap either. So it's a difficult kind of double-edged sword that there are a lot of people who want the opportunity to do that, but it's also, like anything else, expensive to go through that certification program. So I just wanted to throw that out there, if it would be possible for, as part of a next step for language access, to assist those who were interested in being an interpreter, to either point them in the right direction or to have some funds initially, I don't know, for their first semester or quarter or year of that program. So that would be fantastic. So like I said, I don't know a whole lot about it, but I know that I have seen in my own life people translating for other people at events and things, and then wanting to do that in a professional capacity and being told no, or being asked if they had certification and that's not something they have. So although it may not be one of the top 5 languages spoken most commonly, and it takes time, right? So you have to ask for an interpreter, you're given one, but they still need time. I don't know what the time length is to either review a document or to help assist you with that. So all of those things in my sharing there. So I see Monica's hand, so I will relinquish the rest of my time to her.
Okay, thank you. According the translation, interpretation, certification is around $400 to $600. Unfortunately, city colleges and places like that, they don't have that. So you have to go through a private institution to do it. Sometimes the school districts do. I do have one, but you're not allowed to use that certification as a public. It's only for the school districts. So yes, there is no programs specifically that they kind of cheap, or you can go. Maybe the city will be, it will be very nice if the city has some way to help people get certified, because it is not cheap. You pay $600, but at the end, it is not that all. You have to pay extra more to finish it up. So I know that because I registered myself for that, but then it comes something else before you can be actually certified. So I think that the city can find something that the people can use to be certified. That will be a very good benefit for the community and the city.
Thank you for those comments. And thanks for that knowledge as well. I didn't know about those costs. But yeah, Alexis, looked like you had a comment before, and then I could go ahead and jump in after.
Oh, well, I was just gonna make sure that Manijeh had a chance to jump in here too.
sorry.
You know, there's lots of people on the board that have a lot of experience, but thank you for the suggestion around considering what contributions we could make to supporting people.
Yeah, yeah. I thank you. I have been an interpreter since 2001, and while I'm doing that, I noticed that just knowing the language doesn't make you a good translator or interpreter. Because I have noticed some people know the language, but when I listen to them when they want to interpret, they're doing it wrong. And even in court, I have noticed that they are translating, interpreting the wrong way. Like I remember in this court session, this guy, they brought him from Los Angeles with so much expenses and all that. And I was doing the interpreting for one party and he was doing for another party. We both were doing in Persian. And I could hear him, he was doing the wrong thing. And I was saying, I was weighing, should I say something? Should I do something? And for some languages, there is no need for certification. For example, for Persian, because it's not that common. Like I have no certification, but since I know the language and I have been doing it for a long time, and they kind of made me take exam or something, and so I would like to kind of make it a requirement for certification for all languages, no matter how much common the language is. But as Monica said, it's really expensive. Because I myself wanted to go and get certified. It was out of my budget. And these are my comments that I wanted to add to.
Thank you, Manijeh. And
Sure.
you've done interpretation for us too before. Yes.
Yes.
It looks like Shara has something.
Yeah, I already typed a lot, but I want just to mention one thing. What I'm asking is not like translating every single document that we have, because I know we don't have that much big Kurdish community here, but at least when I'm entering the city building, when I'm going to ERCO organization, when I'm going to Beaverton School District, this is the places it's been more than 2 to 3 years. I'm a council member, I'm a board member, I'm volunteering in a school district, and I'm going to this place, even I don't see the welcome in my language. That's make me like I'm not belonging here. And you remember at our Nowruz celebration, we had just the small welcoming leaf to THPRD. Every day when I'm going to work, I feel happy when I see it. So what I'm asking, I don't know how to get access to see how many Kurdish people we have here, because as I mentioned in a comment, your policy is from 5 years ago, and I've been here almost 6 years. And I know we have people here, but when I try to contact the Census Bureau, they are not giving me information because they are saying you are individual, we can't share information with you. If it's gonna be from some places like Beaverton, from Beaverton School District, maybe you can get this information. From my side, I try to contact people, but I don't have access to talk to everyone and collect the signature to say we had that much people here. But in this point, at least when we have a Beaverton night market, we have a grant, we have help with pay for rent, for utility. At least if we have information in Kurdish in this language, it's gonna help. Personally, I'm helping to translating. I'm not professional in English, but at least I understand and I can translate it to other people that they know. But if you have it formally, it's gonna help so much. And I don't know if Ahmed here can hear me and agree with that. Sometimes you have translation in Arabic. Recently, I posted I think it's a housing cohort that's gonna happen soon with City Beaverton and Unite Oregon. And I posted a flyer in our Arabic group. And one of the lady contact me and say, I don't understand in Arabic. Could you please send the English version? Like sometimes the translation is not that much. Like it's not the way we are talking. That's happened same at THPRD. We had an event for people to register for summer classes. And they say for first time, we're gonna do a Kurdish flyer. When they send it to me and I say, this Kurdish flag is look like when I'm talking English. It's not like, it's not real talking. It's not completed. That's not how we are talking. And me and my husband, we help to again go through and fix it. So I can help with my language if we have some flyer you want me to translate, and if someone else have a certificate to help. But to mention at ERCO organization, I think it's 6 months, twice a year, I think they have a interpretation course. They are giving out the certification, but it's just for health. I try to participate. It's just for health, like if you are working in a health department.
Oh.
And that's not helping me because I don't have any relationship related to this one. If it was for education or in general, I want to participate and have a certificate and try to help, but it was just for health. So if we have something like that from the city side, I'll be so happy to attend and get license and do it from my side. Yeah.
Thank you. I certainly have comments, but I also saw that there are other hands. And so I want to be respectful of your time. I'll let you, Alexis or Rachel, facilitate how we should move forward.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think we are over on time, and you all have a couple of more agenda items that are important. So I think I would like to, I don't see any more hands up right now. I would like to go ahead and close, I think, and just invite more comments and feedback over text or over email for now, and just know that the plan is to come back and bring you all back some reflections and check in on those. So thank you for your feedback so far, and please continue to share, particularly on more information on those questions or other things that are coming up for you.
Well, thank you for having me. DAB always feels like home, so I'm excited to be back soon.
Thanks, Paolo.
All right, bye y'all.
All right. Time to come back to a recurring topic of conversation for the past 3 months. Everybody's favorite. Let's take a look at our memo of recommendations on those American Rescue Plan funds that Councilor Soucie was talking about during his liaison report. Alexis has watched our video from last month and made track changes to that memo based on the discussion that she heard. I think maybe there's 3 main points here. The first is to sort of remember that the majority of folks at our last meeting voted that our recommendations target or be more specific to providing support for BIPOC communities rather than all communities. So you will see that in the memo. A couple of adjustments were made to the short-term priorities section as discussed. And then there was a more specific ask in relation to developing a multicultural community center in Beaverton. And so you will see those changes reflected there. We don't have a ton of time for discussion tonight. It is sort of our hope that this is kind of in a final state, and if there are any suggestions, they are minor at this point, because we would really like to vote on this tonight so that City Council actually has time to consider these recommendations. So I will open it up for comments now and see how everybody's feeling about this at this time. And if there are no comments and people are really excited about these recommendations, I will also invite a motion to approve them. Teresa.
Thank you, Rachel, and thank you everyone who is here and everyone who is not, who participated in this. I had a chance to review what Alexis sent with the rest of the packet of information, and I think it was great. Thank you, Alexis, for making those modifications based on our feedback and for watching our meeting to get caught up. I would like to make a motion to approve it with the things listed in the attachment that Alexis provided. The changes were noted in red.
I second the motion.
All right, we have a motion by Teresa and a second by Raman. All in favor? Is there any chance I could get a response from the folks who don't have their videos on, either a thumbs up or a thumbs down or something?
Or a comment in the chat.
Or a comment in the chat.
Aye.
Thank you, Ahmed. Thank you, everybody. Any opposed? Okay, I think the motion carries, Alexis.
Yay, we did it.
Yes, it does. And I just want to say, I said it a little bit in the email, but I just want to encourage you all. I know there were changes that some folks wanted that are not in here. And I just want to encourage you to think about this as your formal way to step into the conversation more than anything. I think City Council has already looked at this as, wow, they really want to be engaged and we want to engage with them. And this is a way to do that. And the super specific details of it are less important than that action in and of itself. So I just want to recognize not everybody voted visibly. So there may be some disagreement and that's totally okay. That's like what this process is about. And I think overall, I'm glad that you all are stepping into the conversation with council.
And with that approval comes next steps. So I believe the next steps at this point will be to have a couple of volunteers from DAB attend one of the upcoming city council meetings and introduce this memo during public comment period. Right, Alexis? Okay,
yeah,
cool.
That would be great.
So is there two people who would be interested in doing that? Be really brief. Manijeh? Anybody else? Manijeh and Manijeh.
I would like Teresa to go with me.
Teresa, how do you feel about being volunteered?
I am not opposed. Manijeh can twist my arm. Alexis, you will provide us with proposed dates and provide us with dates that City Council gives us back. I assuming you're going to give them a list of dates to choose from, and based on their schedule, they'll just pick one. Is that correct?
Actually, it wouldn't be a presentation. What I'm suggesting is just that you all go to a public comment at the next meeting, which it sounds like from what Councilor Soucie said would be August 17th, I believe that's a regular meeting with public comment. I can double check that, and for you all to just to be there and say some words and then we send it, but so that in public you have delivered the recommendations.
I see.
So you don't need approval on the agenda.
Perfect. Just to say, hey, the Diversity Advisory Board came up with this, and this is how we would like the funds to be allocated. Fantastic.
Yeah. And possibly we'd love to be involved in the conversation moving forward if you all want to continue engagement, or this is the memo that we have for you and please read it or whatever you want to say.
Thank you, Teresa.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you, Manijeh and Teresa, for volunteering to do that for us.
I was voluntold, but I'm very happy that I was.
Okay, well, I guess that just leads us to our last agenda piece, updates, starting with Beaverton Night Market.
Okay. So Jodi, I believe is here as well. I have some important news to share with you all. So I will go ahead and do that first. And then if she wants to jump in as well, feel free to do that. So the biggest thing that we've been dealing with over the last few days has been, or last several days, has been trying to evaluate and respond to the situation with the excessive heat warning that's being issued for, that has been issued for this week. So we've been in the process of evaluating that information and seeing if it's going to change, if it has changed, talking with our emergency manager and our risk manager at the city, and they participate in these different networks of folks evaluating the situation. So we met as a small planning team with upper management in our department and the emergency manager and risk manager this afternoon and looked at that information. We had originally been worried a little bit about wildfire smoke as well, but that seems like that has is not a huge concern at this point. But the heat advisory is a huge concern at this point. And so I can show you all a chart that was really informative for me in terms of that information. But basically it shows that Beaverton, particularly on Friday, is going to be in the highest risk category in terms of excessive heat. So it's called the very high risk for the entire population due to the duration of the heat and the fact that the temperatures are not going to lower very much at night. And so the heat index is projected to be 107 or 108 on Friday. Temperatures, the hourly predictions are not predicted to go down much even as the night goes on. So at 7 p.m. it's still going to be 100 degrees as predictions are right now, and that's been increasing over the last few days, so it could continue to increase. So based on that information, the current recommendation to the city manager is to cancel Friday's event and to go ahead with Saturday's event as planned and with the hours as planned, which will still be very hot, but is not in nearly that same category of warning. So the status of that is that the recommendation has gone to the interim city manager, and then he is going to decide if he wants to affirm or change that and make the decision final either later tonight or tomorrow, hopefully, so that we can make adjustments as necessary. There has been some acknowledgement by city leaders too that they understand that there's already been investments made by vendors and by participants, and so wanting to honor and think about how we can help support or maybe mitigate some of the losses that will happen by not having a two-day event. But the risk at this point for folks feels too high. That somebody could have heat stroke, that we could, despite as many ways as we prepare, that it is not responsible or safe for us to host a massive event on Friday. So I can't express to you how difficult this information is to share with you and to also be able to absorb. But I need to share that with you. We've gone through a bazillion scenarios of, could we change the weekend? Could we expand into Sunday? Could we make it later in the night on Friday? Start later in the night on the Friday? Could we delay for a couple of months, etc.? There are so many domino pieces in this project that what we came up with as the best proposal was to maintain Saturday and to remove Friday. So that's not 100% confirmed, but that's the info we have. So a lot of adjustments need to be made, but if you all have questions or comments right now, please go ahead. Yeah, go ahead, Monica.
So when is going to be official that you're canceling, that it's going to be canceled on Friday?
As soon as we hear from the city manager, his final decision about that, which will come, I'm hoping tomorrow morning, we'll be able to start sending out notifications and communications to all the different circles of folks.
How are you going to reach out to people or the communities? Because yesterday I had like a bunch of little small flyers that I I went to do my nails and then I went to eat outside, and I gave it to everybody who crossed me by that little mall. So I just finished yesterday all my flyers. So how are you going to do to announce? Are you going to put on Facebook? I do a lot of the announcements. Are we allowed to do it after you officially say it? Or because you're going to need a lot of announcement from now to tomorrow night to Thursday night for people to know there is no night market on Friday.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, we would push it out through all of the city channels that are possible. So we'd do a press release. We would contact media, push through social media, push through partners and different newsletters and communications. Do website, all the ways that we can, and then we would absolutely ask for any people to bounce that information in different places as well. We will also have signage. We would have signage downtown and in those spots, but it probably won't necessarily reach everyone. We will do what we can.
My personal, I will be allowed to do my own little announcements after it's official, like I do on Facebook.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, once
Okay.
we put out the official word, yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
That's very sad, though.
It is very sad.
Mm-hmm.
It is very, very sad.
Yeah, the issue is like I hand out a lot of those posters. Even I put it in some halal market, and I put one on my car too when I drive everywhere, so people they see it. So I don't know how we can do that, but anyway, it's a safety issue, and I think safety is number one. So I think we need to go with it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ahmed.
I don't like this silence.
Just leaving some space for any additional comments or just some sadness also, or frustration around.
Well,
Yeah,
we can't mess with Mother Nature. It's nobody's doing. And if we challenge Mother Nature, consequences would be detrimental.
Thanks, Raman. Shara, are we gonna add something?
Yeah, I was just saying, like, having an open tent and having more cooling station, and every vendor can bring a fan. If we have a big one, like partner with THPRD, they have a lot of cooling station, but I'm worried about people when they are coming from home till they are getting to the market, even if you can keep the market a little cooler, but what you gonna do with these people? Or starting it late at 7 at least? I don't know. I don't want to be canceled.
Let's call firefighters, and they bring those big trucks, and they keep sending water on the air till we're done.
Yeah, have a constant misting. I like that. We are working with THPRD to have misting stations, and also are renting some. And unfortunately, the electrical grid that we will be popping up can't accommodate fans in every booth. But we did talk about that. It would crash the system if we did that. There was one other thing that you mentioned at the end, but I lost it.
I think Shara mentioned opening later. Hi everyone, by the way.
Yeah.
Hi, Jodi.
And the big concern, one of the big concerns about opening later, in addition to just that the temperature isn't going to drop that much, is the fact that even if we did open later, that it would still force vendors to be there setting up in the very heat of the day. The worst time of the day. We can't think of a scenario that eliminates people having to be outside for hours and hours and hours when there's when all recommendations are telling people to not do that day. But Jodi, did you want to add something? I didn't want to put you on the spot because I know we're all sad and processing, but if you want to say something.
I don't think there's anything else to add about that point. It is a very hard decision, I think, and so many factors, like Alexis mentioned, play into it. But I think we're all it's a little sad, but we still have one day, and we'll enjoy that one day.
That's what I wanted to say. Let's not have like frowny, sad faces. Let's be happy. We're here. We're going to have one day. Just that's the process of learning also.
So Alexa, then we need to review the volunteer shift who will be there, and I think all those duties need to to review again, and let's see who can be, who's not. I don't know. I think we need to do that as.
Yeah, probably tomorrow we're going to talk about that.
Absolutely, that's a priority, to be able to communicate with everybody and then to reshape some of that. Jodi's going to have her work cut out for her as well, reshaping what the performance schedule looks like. Yeah, we'll need to get volunteers situated where we can use them. There may be some setup that we can do on Friday and not the hottest part of the day that we could still use volunteers for, but we need to work on that. So thanks for that reminder. Go ahead, Teresa.
So Alexis, the people who was going to work on Friday on the stage and all of that, they're going to work on Saturday, or is going to be the people who was already scheduled for Saturday?
Are you asking about the volunteers, Monica, or the performers?
Yes. No, the volunteers, the performers, I don't know. You guys probably going to change, I don't know. But everybody who was supposed to work on Friday, are they not going to work, and it's going to still working only the ones that were scheduled for Saturday?
Well, our volunteer shifts were not completely full quite yet. So I think the goal would be to reaccommodate some of the people that had signed up for Friday to Saturday instead, and maybe to condense some of the folks on Friday, if we are going to do some activities of setup earlier in the day or something like that, to try to get them to come at a different time. I also anticipate that we will lose some volunteers and people will be canceling on us. So I think we just need to reshape what we actually need and then check in with people so we can use as many people as we can.
I gotta break the news to my friend. She wants to celebrate her birthday with us, you know, Cynthia.
Yes, yep. Please, if it's not private, but if you could just keep it to yes, personal communication as opposed to on social media quite yet. But yes, of course, you can let Cynthia know.
My first friend. Okay, so we'll be working on a Saturday.
Sorry, there was a question in the chat about, is there a chance to reschedule the event for another time? We did consider the possibility of canceling altogether this weekend and trying to put it back together either next weekend or a weekend in a couple of months, or some different scenarios. The problem with that stems from both the logistics of equipment and people rentals and lineup that takes more advanced time than from one weekend to the next, and also from just availability and coordination of all the vendors and all the performers and all that, you know, that sort of goes on the assumption that we could just pick up and move them all to another date. And so we were not feeling nearly as hopeful about that. There was also costs involved. So people have spent money on insurance, on temporary restaurant licenses that are valid for this weekend, other pieces that would be significantly disrupted if we just decided to try to move it to somewhere else.
Yeah, it will be very difficult to reschedule because it had to be programmed again, trying to do all the things, connections. So we're gonna have to just deal with Saturday and that'll be it. If we cannot move that, yeah.
Well, thank you all for your comments or suggestions. Oh, Raman, did you want to add something?
Yes, very briefly, I would like to announce that I was representing Deb in this naming committee, naming of the new Beaverton Police Station precinct. We came up with the name Unity Plaza. It is going to be launched, or the grand opening will be sometime in September. As soon as the date is decided, I will let Alexis know so that you all are invited to that. The process that we went through to name was there was open suggestion thing where we had received 156 suggestions. So we went through process of elimination. We did not want to name it after an ex-mayor or ex-police officer or anything like that. One of the things that we gave a thought to was maybe naming after some indigenous Indian name. What happened was Francisca did a great job in doing research and found out that the indigenous Indians did not want that. So we chopped that off. And then it was maybe Hispanic name or all that. And we felt that we needed to remain very neutral and name it something that would not represent one community. Hence the name Unity Plaza was chosen. The other name in running was Peace Plaza. So it was voted and I voted for Unity Plaza.
Unity Square, I believe, Raman.
Unity
Square, but that was a wonderful summary of the process.
Yeah, Unity Square. I'm sorry. Yeah.
I thought you guys changed it.
So please, in September, the grand opening would be, the date would be anywhere between September 9th and September 20th, if I'm, yeah. So as soon as it is decided, I will let Alexis know and she can do a broadcast email. Thank you.
I think the last thing that we wanted to check in with you all about, you saw the staff liaison announcements. There aren't a ton of new pieces there. I'll just let you all review those separately, or some of it we've already covered. But the last piece was around, there's been a proposal to possibly have a meeting in person. So wanted to see how you all feel about that. Your leadership team suggested that maybe next meeting in September could be a gathering in person, both to celebrate the night market and then also to just have a meeting in person. Not necessarily a commitment that like we're drawing a line in the sand and now from now on we'll do them in person, but to be able to gather. So curious if people are feeling like they want to do that, if they're would be comfortable coming in person, and if so, 5:30 might not be the time. So what is the time that you'd be able to gather? So seeing some thumbs up.
I think that would be a great idea, but we also should be mindful of this Delta variant and see how that pans out.
Yeah, and it wouldn't be at City Hall, it would be at the community center. And I believe we could make it.
Sorry, where is it going to be?
At the community center across from the library.
Oh, okay.
Is where we were thinking of having it.
Yeah.
And I believe we could make it so that we are meeting outside.
And then there is a suggestion for 6 o'clock. I am okay with 6 if everybody is.
All right. Well, we will go ahead and tentatively plan on that, but please, if you have any concerns that haven't been shared or more about those, let me know between now and then, and we'll also keep an eye on the situation. We are in city buildings all masks all the time again now, but as Rachel said, we could either have it outside in that patio area, or we could at the very least keep all the doors open and use masks. So we can do some modification, but also we can check in and see if that's appropriate.
The patio looks beautiful.
Thanks.
So did we decide on the time or?
It looks good. Yeah, I should say that out loud. Looks like there's proposals for 6. A couple people support that. Anybody need later than that, or does 6 work?
Yeah, 6 is good.
6 sounds good to me.
Me too.
Great. 6 o'clock it is. All right, more details to follow. Thank you everyone for this productive meeting tonight. And I look forward to gathering with you all on Saturday for our night market. We'll just bundle all of our enthusiasm and excitement and joy and love in one night. It'll be great. In the meantime, stay safe, stay cool.
Thank you, guys.
Bye-bye.
See you soon, and good luck.
Love you all. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you for being.